The city of Lithora Prime sprawled across the iridescent plains like a living circuit, metal towers shimmering under the twin suns. For most inhabitants, the days were routine, factory shifts, market trades, and the relentless hum of hover traffic. But in the quiet corners of the industrial district, far from the bustling crowds, lived Elias Crane, a human engineer whose life had been defined by quiet labor and unnoticed kindness. Elias had arrived on Lithora Prime as a young man, fresh from Earth, eager to make his mark. He was small, wiry, and brilliant with machines. The kind of person who could coax life out of broken engines and worn-out robots. But life had not been kind to him. As an outsider, he found himself shunted to the fringes, assigned to the dead-end repair bays, where the richest corporations sent their discarded technology. It was during one of these long, exhausting shifts that Elias first encountered the child. The alien child appeared at the edge of the scrapyard. No more than 6 cycles older, delicate, pale-skinned creature with translucent skin that shimmered faintly under the twin suns. Its large, black eyes reflected the world with a mixture of hunger and fear. The species was rare in the sector known as Ve, and their kind had suffered greatly during the wars that had swept through the outer colonies decades earlier. Elias noticed the child because it was trying to eat scraps of coolant-soaked metal from the trash. The little hands shook as it pried at the corroded shards. A pang of something deep, perhaps empathy, perhaps memory of his own childhood hunger hit Elias. He crouched down and spoke softly, "You can't eat that. You'll get sick." The child looked at him, eyes wide, and for a moment Elias feared it might run. Instead, it nodded slowly, a fragile gesture of trust. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small pack of nutrient wafers. "Here, eat this." The child hesitated, sniffed the wafer, and then devoured it hungrily. That was the beginning. Over the next several cycles, Elias found the child returning day after day. He fed it, shared scraps of clothing when the weather turned harsh, and even built a small insulated shelter near the edge of the scrapyard. The child, whom he named Sorry, never spoke much at first. Their communication consisted mostly of gestures, expressions, and the occasional humming sound that Sorry made a song of gratitude, Elias later realized. Years passed. Elias continued his work in the repair bay, and Sorry grew. The child's body expanded in strength and intelligence, a constant miracle before Elias's eyes. By the time Sorry reached adolescence, few years shy of human adulthood, she was capable of understanding complex machinery, helping Elias in the bay, and even crafting her own devices. She was fiercely intelligent, but also fiercely loyal, never leaving the small corner of the scrapyard that had been their home. Despite her capabilities, the outside world had not been kind to her. Veilari were often discriminated against, and Sorry, having grown up in the fringes, carried the quiet scars of neglect and suspicion. Yet every day she returned to Elias, not out of obligation, but affection. Then came the day when everything changed. Lithora Prime's authorities announced a sudden technological initiative, call for engineers and inventors to submit their designs for the colony's new energy network. The reward was unprecedented: a lifetime contract with the Lithoran Central Grid, a prestigious position, and access to technology that could make any inventor famous across the sector. Elias, now in his late 40s, hesitated. He had the skill, certainly, but he was shy, and the world had never opened its doors to him. He had spent decades unnoticed, a background hum in the machinery of Lithora Prime, Meanwhile, Sorry, now grown into a striking young Valari woman with eyes that glimmered like liquid night, insisted he enter. You're brilliant, Elias. You've built things that no one else could. The world needs to see that, she said one evening. While they tinkered on a solar collector in the scrapyard, Elias shook his head. I'm too old, too small, too invisible. Sorry paused, her gaze steady. Invisible. You raised me. You fed me when no one else would. You taught me to survive. You were never invisible to me or to anyone who matters. Her words stirred something long dormant in Elias. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was pride. But for the first time in decades, he allowed himself to dream. Together, they worked day and night on the design. Sarah's brilliance complemented his experience perfectly. She suggested innovations in energy flux, regulation, nanomaterial conduits, and self-repairing circuits that Elias had never even imagined. And through it all, he noticed the subtle ways she watched him, her admiration and trust never wavering. When the submission day arrived, Elias hesitated. For a long moment, he stared at the envelope containing his and Sorry's blueprints. Finally, he let her take it. Whatever happens, we did our best, she said. The response came within the month. Elias's design had won unanimously. Not only that, but the Lithuanian Central Grid's head engineer requested that he report immediately to the main hub. The reward was extraordinary: financial security, fame, and influence over the sector's future. Yet, as he prepared to leave the scrapyard behind, Elias felt a pang of uncertainty. He had spent decades in obscurity, raised a child into a genius, and yet he wondered if his life would truly change. Sorry, sensing his doubts, smiled. You think this changes everything? Look around, Elias. Everything you did changed me, and that changed the world. It was then that Elias realized the truth. All those small acts of kindness, feeding a hungry child day after day, teaching her not just to survive but to thrive, had sown seeds that now bore unimaginable fruit. He stepped into the central hub the next cycle, uncertain and nervous, and was immediately swept into a world he had never known: meetings with dignitaries, discussions with alien engineers, and even appearances before the Council of Lithera Prime. But the most astonishing moment came during the first council assembly. Sorry stood beside him, a poised and brilliant young woman representing not just herself, but the ingenuity of the Valari species. The council members, many of whom had once dismissed Elias as a nobody, now treated him with respect. And when Sorry spoke of their innovations, the assembly was captivated. What you see before you is the result of decades of mentorship, trust, and belief, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. Elias Crane didn't just repair machines, he built futures. He saved me when the world had abandoned me, and today, together, we offer a future for Lithera Prime unlike anything it has ever known. The applause was deafening. Tears blurred Elias's vision as he looked at Sorry. She had changed his life forever, just as he had changed hers. But the beauty of it lay not in wealth, fame, or recognition. It lay in the quiet ripple of kindness that had spread through decades, now touching countless lives across the colony. In the months that followed, Elias's life transformed completely. He was celebrated not only for his technical skill, but for the humanity he had shown in a world often devoid of it. Sorry became a prominent figure in technological innovation, but she always credited Elias, the quiet human who had fed a hungry alien child and taught her the power of hope. Years later, sitting on the balcony of his new home overlooking the twin suns. Elias would often reflect on the life he had lived. He remembered every scrap of food shared, every sleepless night repairing engines with Sorry by his side, and every moment of silent hope. And in the quiet moments, when the winds of Lithora Prime swept across the iridescent plains, he would smile, knowing that one small act of kindness had indeed changed everything. Because sometimes, the most powerful inventions aren't circuits, engines, or machines, they're hearts. And one human heart had changed the future of an entire world. Asterisk.